Rock Island is a company mostly known for 1911s, this one here being one of my personal favorites of theirs. An all-steel 6-inch 10mm with rails for days, just a beast of a handgun. Loads of fun to shoot. But that's not what we're looking at today. We're looking at something striker-fired with an aluminum frame. The STK 100 tabletop review and field strip coming up next on GBGuns. When news of the STK 100 came out, it was kind of shocking. It's not really what we think of when we think Rock Island. But still pretty darn exciting. In fact, probably more exciting than another 1911 variant. It came in this bag and incredibly well lubricated for shipping protection and things like that. So well that in handling it at the shop, my finger slipped and I got bit by the gun right off the bat. I think it's a nice touch that they included that lubrication. I've removed most of it here so that we can take a better look at the gun. But also kind of funny in a time when guns are flying off the shelves to think that something needed to be protected in case it sat somewhere for a long time. So the gun, we get two 17-round KCI Glock pattern magazines. Did come with a chamber flag in it. There's our federally mandated trigger lock. Up top, you get a classic thing from Rock Island that includes the date it was tested, as well as the test-fired casing, which is something I appreciate. You might see on here, it might be a little small, that is a 1 in 16 right-hand twist. A little bit different, but not unheard of for 9mm. Might be providing us some slightly different velocities. We could take a look at that. The user's manual, which some people mock me for looking at, I think it gives you an idea of how well a company wants you to know their gun. It's kind of small, and the print is really small. My 39-year-old eyes had to really strain to look at that, but all your specs are there. I don't bother you with specs. If you wanted to know that, you should go to the manufacturer website, not a YouTube video. Looking at the manual, having flipped through it and read it, it's laid out generally straightforward as you'd expect. The pictures, however, though, are a little bit dark, so it's kind of tough between the darkness and the size to see what they're talking about. But overall, the layout is nice. I bet this manual would have been beautiful in a larger size. However, that probably wouldn't fit in the case nearly as easily. Enough with the boring stuff. Let me get this out of the way and let's take a look at that gun. We'll of course start off by showing clear. Now, when this was first announced, a lot of people said, oh, it's a Glock clone, but it's aluminum. And having just kind of looked at it a little bit, I don't really think it's a Glock clone. Yes, it takes Glock pattern magazines. These are 17-round mags. You get 2 of them. When we get to the range, we will do our multi-mag test. I believe at last count we had 8 different aftermarket Glock pattern magazines. So we'll let you know what feeds and doesn't. I'm expecting them all to work, but sometimes you catch a brand or a specific magazine that a gun doesn't like. That's why we test it. Other reasons why I don't think it's quite Glock-like. Yes, it's striker fired, but of course they've gone with an aluminum frame. This is an aluminum clamshell design. You can see the seam if I get the light to hit it. And the camera to focus. There you go. There's the seam down the back. And you can see it all along the gun. Come on, camera, work with me. There we go. And it appears to be screwed together. That's an interesting construction technique. We know Kel-Tec is big on screws. Is it a problem here? I don't think so. I trust that it'll be good. Is it a cost-cutting measure? Yeah, probably, which is a good thing. At launch, the MSRP for this is under $600, which I find to be quite impressive for an all-metal gun. It adds some heft that is recoil taming. In theory, we haven't shot it yet, but most heavy guns are comfortable to shoot. Plus a 4.5-inch barrel here is going to make for what's probably going to be a really pleasant shooter. Weighs in at 1.8 pounds according to the manufacturer website. So now on to our normal walk around the gun, close up and features. We're going to start at the front, and YouTube, this camera is about a foot in front of me. angled 90 degrees down. I'm looking at a screen angled 90 degrees back at me. By pointing this muzzle up, I am not doing a suicide ideation, nor am I inspiring others to commit suicide, nor am I pointing this in any sort of unsafe direction. It's not pointed at anyone. So, that out of the way, we've got the front here, slight bevel, barrel sticking out a little bit beyond the slide. I've kind of been a fan of that. If it's going to be flush, then let it have one of those crazy bell type crowns to the muzzles like Wilson Combat, but that costs a lot of money to do, and this gun is rather affordable. Speaking of crown, we do have a slight recess there, slight target crown to help protect the rifling. It's a good thing. Coming underneath, we have 3 slots for accessories, which is great since lights, lasers, and bears can all be attached now, and all having different sizes. Having 3 slots to be able to find what fits your gun right is best. You can see we've got lightning cut windows on the sides and on the top here, reducing the reciprocating mass. That is also the mass above the hand is what helps cut down on recoil, also helps keep the slide moving faster, so should once again improve the way it feels when you shoot. We've got some serrations here that aren't super deep. My fingers slip on them even after wiping it off. They appear plenty deep. I'm just not grabbing. The good news is these windows really work for grabbing. So if you're a press checker, you can get grab there. While we're up top, you might notice a bit of wear finish on the barrel hood there. That's kind of discouraging on a brand new gun. However, it is relieving to see that it's equal across the top. That's telling us that the interface is nice and even. We've seen some guns recently where, once again, a brand new gun, it just handling it, dry practice, etc., fresh out of the box, it wore some finish off the edge of the barrel hood, but it didn't do it as evenly as this. So that's a positive. We also have a nice step here, should you want to grab there for press check. Press checks may or may not be necessary since our extractor also serves as a loaded chamber indicator. That little tab will be sticking out to give you a tactile way of knowing if there's a round in the chamber. No texturing on the front of the trigger guard. Move our way to the trigger. You can see it is Glock style with the safety dingus in the middle. Safety dingus has a nice firm spring on it, so it's not going to happen accidentally. The trigger pull itself, we come to a wall, creep to a break, very Glock-like. However, unlike Glock triggers, this is actually fairly smooth. The reset, let me do that again, is about standard, but takes you right back to the wall, which kind of creeps through and then breaks. So nothing fantastic, but certainly better than other stock triggers out there. Our STK 100 logo is not super deep or large, which is kind of nice, gives the gun a subtle branding. Magazine release is not sheltered by any raised area, however, it is beyond where the frame radius is inward, and that kind of keeps it out of the way, but it's still reachable for my large hands. We'll find out at the range if this works for Tia's hands or not. She has an issue with Glock styled guns and having to break her grip to rotate to push the mag release. It does pop out. It's about even with the frame. Feels like it pops out a little bit, but it's pretty much even with the frame. The front strap is serrated horizontally. That is the correct direction to do it since the gun is trying to rock this way under recoil, so I appreciate that. Coming underneath to the magazine well, we can see we do not have any flaring to it whatsoever. It's squared off and even has some kind of sharp edges. However, with a double stack single feed magazine like this, the end of the magazine effectively serves as your guidance. Now, Glock style magazines are fatter because they're steel covered in polymer, so it's not quite as dramatic of an effect as you'd have on an all steel magazine, but it's still there and it inserts fairly well. A little bit of friction, that could just be this particular magazine. We'll find out when we get to the range how else it does. Magazine ejection, it gives it a pop. Ultimate test with the slide back upside down. Yeah, you can see it gives it a kick. Nothing too positive, but it's also not getting stuck in there. Our back strap has some grooves to add friction, kind of stylized in an interesting way. How effective that's going to be, we'll have to get to the range to find out. Slide to frame fit, impeccably tight, very tight. Come back to our front, we've got a little bit of side to side, a little bit of vertical, as with most guns, but in the back here, it is tight like a 1911. Here's our sights. We have serrated blacked out rear and a fine, not super thin, but thinner than average front sight with a white dot on it. You also notice that we have a plate here for removing all of this. It does take the sight with it for mounting an optic. That's a modern thing that everybody wants. I did not, at the point of filming this, find any plates or adapters available. They kind of went the CZ route of releasing an optics ready gun without it being 100% optics ready, at least not from what I could see. That of course will change over time. No one complains about the CZ thing anymore. It was just when the gun came out, everyone was excited, but you couldn't put optics on it. You can see we've got an enlarged beaver tail here to help prevent any slide bite, which my hand is well beneath anyways, so that shouldn't be an issue at all. The slide lock and release is like the extended ones from smaller Glocks. On the right side of the gun, you can also see our grip paneling here. This grip stuff, this texturing, works pretty well. It's got some tack to it and is raised up beyond the body of the frame itself, as it should be, since that's really not a place where you're putting pressure on the gun when shooting. The magazine release appears to not be reversible. And that's the rest of this side of the gun. Next, let's field strip this thing and take a look inside the gun, and I'll show you some of the differences I've noticed between it and the Glock people say it looks so much like. Field stripping the Rock Island STK 100 is like most Glocks. We check for clear, press our trigger. You got takedown levers on both sides. Those both need to be held down. Bring the slide back an eighth of an inch or so, and bring it forward. The frame, man, this thing's beefy. Bring it in to take a look. You can see that our rails are much longer than on the Glock setup, but the trigger mechanism is very similar. A lot more rail surface, helping keep things locked down and on track in the same direction for ideally a longer period of time. You'd think that if this were to wear, it's got to wear a lot more before things are going to get out of guidance. To contrast that with a Glock, I've got a no sight Glock 17 here. If I can get this damn thing apart. There we go. And I'll show you one of the differences where there are pins on the 2-pin Glock. There are screws. Then if we take a look at our rails, you can see our rail surface on the Glock system is much shorter than this full length here. Otherwise, things do look quite similar. And no, a Gen 3 Glock slide will not fit on the STK 100. Bringing our slides in, this is not a factory Glock slide, of course. It is a LTD combat slide machined to tighter tolerances I've found than the factory stuff. But you can see that because those frame, this being the STK, this being the LTD combat, the cuts here are different to permit the frame in. Some slight differences in the track and how everything's set up. These strikers also look slightly different. So you're going to have to wait for someone to experiment on parts interchange. I'm thinking you're not going to see as much as you would expect. You see this big cutout here that is lacking on the Gen 3 Glock cut. Now to get our slide apart, we're going to simply push forward on the guide rod to bring it out. Nice heavy steel guide rod with a captured flat coil spring, and you can see by the screw tip on there that the end is removable, which means the springs can be changed should you wear one out or want to change to dial to a specific bullet weight. or pressure that you're using. As far as what ammo works with this and doesn't, you'll see that in our shooting impressions with our trademarked What's for Dinner test. The manual says to use manufactured new industry standard ammunition that I imagine includes both SAMI and CIP, and we will be using both SAMI and CIP ammo in our test. Knocking the barrel out, just don't want to unlock it, bring it forward a little bit and back. Now we can get a look inside of our slide, which is nicely machined, got some good heft to it, and follows the standard basic striker fired layout, very Glock-esque in pattern. The same thing happens with removing this back plate here to get your extractor out and striker out and things like that. Close look at the barrel. We've got a nicely polished feed ramp here. And there's that step on the hood that's been already rubbing on the slide. As always, we will do our chamber fitment test with our trusted nozzler match. We're down to our last box of this, which unfortunately means we won't be shooting it because we need it for this chamber fitment test. What we're doing is listening for that good plunk and then looking at how much support the brass has. See, it goes right up to the edge here, which is proper. Looks like, okay, there is a little bit of unsupported underneath, so it is following that Glock design. That's where you get the Glock smiley. But it seems fairly well supported. It's not as big of a relief as I recall seeing on a basic Glock barrel. I don't have a factory Glock barrel handy to compare against, but this isn't a comparison video. This is just an examination of this one. So we have good chamber support and good fitment. Those of you that follow the channel have seen guns not do well on that test, and then we get out to the range and surprise, surprise, we have issues at the range. So that's why we do it. Just like the What's for Dinner test, many guns pass with flying colors. Not all guns do, and we're here to let you know what does and doesn't, so you don't go out and waste your money on the wrong ammo for your gun. Or if you're in love with a particular load, you're not worried about getting it to work in a specific gun you know in advance. I did have to reset the trigger here to get this bar out of the way, to bring the slide back on, and the gun is now back together. To our YouTube nannies, if you missed the pre-roll, what I just did there is a field strip. It is part of basic end user maintenance and safety to ensure the gun is in good operating order, as was shown in the manual, which I flipped through in the beginning. If you have any further questions, please contact the manufacturer. I did not disassemble or assemble a gun, I merely field stripped it. Back to the viewers. So that's our STK 100 tabletop review and field strip. When we get to the range, you will see myself and Ms. Tia shoot this through our standard battery of tests, including our What's for Dinner test, the spinner test, which with this longer sight radius, longer barrel, we know we've got longer sight radius for easier aiming, longer barrel for more velocity, more energy on target, and a heavy gun that isn't going to want to flip as much. Spinner test should be fun with this. We'll also give you an attempted good group of 5, followed by our conclusions on how we feel about the gun after spending a day on the range with it. I appreciate all of you who have supported the channel for so many years, keeping this going. We'll see you guys on the range. Thanks for watching.